scheduled for the 14th of December. Now, with Colonel Lakin's court-martial less than a month out, KHW and I just say myself, I can't speak for the radio station, is encouraging phone calls to Congress all of this week and next week and continuing to do so to these newly elected members of the House and Senate to drive home, and the ones that are returning to sit. This is a lame duck. Driving home the fact that this decorated 18-year serving Army officer, physician, numerous deployments overseas, Bronze Star recipient, combat medic's badge, facing imprisonment for defying military orders in order to seek assurance that Barack Obama is constitutionally eligible to serve as President of the United States. And why, in God's name, has this man been spending, some people believe, as high as $2.7 million thus far to hide a birth certificate worth less than $20? The colonel's putting his entire career on the line. I think he's doing it for all of us. He needs your help, and the mainstream press, these timid politicians are being punked out, and we need to ratchet up and demand that Colonel Lakin be allowed to at least defend himself. His brother joins us. Doctor, good morning. Thanks for coming on the show.
Hello, Peter. Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. I guess the first question is, how's your brother doing as it gets closer?
He's doing well. He's pretty steadfast. He's, a fighting man. So he's taken his stand, and he's ready to defend it.
What is your best guess on what's going to happen?
My personal best guess is that, this isn't an issue that the Army should necessarily have to fight or have to address, and yet, Obama's the reported commander-in-chief. So, sure. So it is an issue for the Army, and it is an issue for the military, and not addressing it now won't make it go away. So my optimistic hope is that what would be nice is just in discovery or whether it's in sentencing or in the actual trial itself, they just send a subpoena birth certificate. And I know that's probably not going to happen, but it'll certainly tell us a lot about what is actually being hidden here, and why.
I'd agree. I read Colonel Lynn, who's going to be the military judge, and the contention and I'm sure that she didn't come to this decision on her own, knowing, this is the well-known substance rolls downhill. And the judge rules that the president's records and other evidence or witnesses pertaining to his birth and his life are not relevant to the case and will not be admitted. They also will not grant your brother or his attorneys discovery.
Right.
So in other words, he is not being allowed to defend himself.
That was discouraging. It was. You hope that this really is going to be a judiciary hearing, and yet maybe it's more of a disciplinary hearing, and that's really not what it's supposed to be. So I believe you're right, Peter. A judge kind of makes up their mind ahead of time, and then there's no case law directly on point, and certainly no military code directly on point. So you get to kind of find out whatever cases you get to spin them however you want to support your conclusion. But in reality, the decision is made ahead of time, probably.
No, I firmly believe that, the Judge Advocate Corps and at the DOD made this decision. I doubt very seriously if a full colonel made this decision.
Right.
And the other part of it is the total lack of attention. I mean, we give it tremendous attention. Others do as well. But if you ask CBS News or the Wall Street Journal or, anywhere, your brother doesn't exist.
Right. Isn't that funny? They were the original birthers, too.
Oh, yeah.
When it came to John McCain.
Yeah, that's right.
And now it's complete silence.
Yeah, and we did the radio show the other day. I know you get a chance sometimes to listen online.
Right.
But how Wikipedia scrubbed that young guy's work, and that was amazing. And what are these people afraid of?
Exactly. And all he wants really is the truth. That's all he wants. That's all. He's very principled, and he knew he was giving up a lot to do this. But that's just, he comes from a long line of really. I want to say the whole Lakin family are patriots, and his father was fought in Korea as a Marine, and his brothers in the military, and his grandfathers, and it goes way back. And whether for him to take on the President of the United States and just hold him accountable on this issue takes a tremendous amount of courage.
Dr. Lakin is with us. Greg Lakin, his brother, of course, Dr. Lieutenant Colonel Terry Lakin. And by the way, got a phone call from a longtime friend of mine who I find out is a friend of yours, Tomas Romero.
Exactly, he is.
Yeah, Tomas called me and said, hey, and I said, hey. So what about this notion of no one's above the law?
Exactly. I think once in a while presidents may start to feel that way. I know probably Richard Nixon felt that way at one time.
Oh, absolutely.
And it's important that we let them know that that's not the case. And sometimes it takes the little guy on the bottom to do that. But you would hope that the courts, who's supposed to protect the little guy, you would hope that they would do that.
You think, Doctor, and I've thought about this so much in the last, as this thing really intensifies now, that there doesn't want to be the judge. The judge doesn't want to, this judge or that judge or the other judge or that court, or for that matter, that elected official, doesn't want to be the person who stands and says, we need to look at this. Because if, in fact, all these things are true, and I say if in fact, because certainly no one knows the truth. I mean, there's a handful of people that do. I'm certainly not one of them.
Right.
But suppose all these questions prove to be true, that this man has manipulated and created and done these kinds of things. There are people that legitimately right. There'll be riots in the streets.
There could be. It will have to be handled and addressed correctly. But again, this country will survive it.
Absolutely.
Worst case scenario, this country will survive it and learn from it.
Yeah. That and now with states that saying, we're gonna make, when if you're going to be on the ballot in 2012, you have to present your credentials.
And that was what was supposed to happen in the first place, and
Absolutely.
It never did in this case. So
Absolutely.
I don't blame states for taking matters into their own hands when the federal government and issues like this seems inept.
And that's what happened here when Barack Obama should have been vetted in Denver, Colorado, went at the convention, and of course was not. Correct. Because in the politically correct environment that you and I are forced to live in, I don't live in it, but it's attempted to be forced to live in. If you dare ask a question, particularly the people here in Denver, either the press or the gathering Democrats, they might be called a racist.
Right. It seems like, and that is something that I find very discouraging, is that, a good defense is a good offense. Mm-hmm. So they immediately, automatically go in attack mode. And,
sure.
And my brother's anything but. As we talked about last time, he's involved in interracial marriage, has 3 beautiful interracial kids. Mm-hmm. His wife is very intelligent internal medicine physician, worked at the VA before, having 3 children with him. I mean, he is totally colorblind.
No,
so for anybody to insinuate that is irresponsible.
Are you going to attend a trial?
Absolutely.
Right. Would you be our reporter for us?
Oh, sure, as long as you realize that I'm a little rough around the edges.
Well, listen, you can't be worse than me. And I can't do what you do, but you could easily come in and do what I do, so that's not the point. Mm-hmm. So I'd love to have you do that. And sure. How many attorneys does he have?
How many attorneys?
Yeah.
This is a lot of out of pocket for him. So
I know we want to help. I know there's a fundraise for him. I know that.
Right. There's a group that wanted to do an amicus brief on his behalf, mm-hmm. But right now he has one attorney that because it's really difficult to have. You have to have one main attorney that kind of runs the show. So that's what he has.
And he stands alone.
He does stand alone. I mean, this is something that's never been done before.
No, it hasn't been.
And so you make beginner mistakes that could cost you years.
And he faces, if what I read is correct, 4 years in Leavenworth.
Exactly. He'll be America's most known political prisoner in my eyes.
Mine too. Mm-hmm. And one of the things we just spoke with Corsi, and one of the things that I certainly agree, is the smartest thing they could do is not do this. And because once they do it, then they turn him into the cause celeb. Mm-hmm. Although I don't expect to see I don't expect to see Sean Penn rushing and saying, but in fact, there will be people that will.
Exactly. Right.
Well, sir, we will talk ASAP, and to your brother the best, and I know one of these days I'll get to meet him and talk to him, but just, there's Ramos and Campion, there's plenty of people that have, as I always say, in that moment, who stands in the town square against the tanks?
Right.
And I suspect that your brother would be one of those guys.
Well, I'd certainly like to thank you and all your listeners for their support, and I know Terry's thankful also. I'll talk ASAP. Thanks, Doctor. Thank you. All right, 12 after the hour, 712, 630 KHOW, Denver's Talk Station. Let's get back at it, 303-713-8255. Trafficker Susan.